And now we're going to talk about operation names. So if you've done the GraphQL stuff on the server, you might have gotten to the point where you were writing queries in Playground and things like that. But the way you might have done that were just like the shorthand method of writing queries and writing mutations. What we're going to do is we're going to use the full approach of writing queries and mutations, starting with something called operation names. So operation names are basically unique names for your client-side queries and mutation operations. What does that basically mean? So if you can think about it like this, if you created a function in JavaScript and you just had a variable, but you didn't actually name that function is technically anonymous, even though the variable has a name. That's basically what you're doing in GraphQL. So to translate that, this query right here for characters, it doesn't have a name. I mean, the query is called characters, but the operation itself doesn't have a name. It's anonymous. So we could actually give this operation a name by using the operation name syntax in GraphQL. And the way we can do that is, so we get rid of this query. The first thing we want to do is we want to type the name of the operation we want to do. In this case, we're going to type the word query. Query means, hey, we actually want to execute a query because there's different types of operations. We have mutations, we have subscriptions. We're interested in executing a query. And as a refresher, queries are responsible for retrieving data from a GraphQL API. So in this case, we want to retrieve some Rick and Morty data. So we're going to issue a query. And then we can just give it an operation name. And the operation name is pretty much, you can name it whatever you want. The restrictions on it is that you can't have any spaces or dashes or anything like that. But you can kind of name it whatever you want. The convention is most people just camel case or Pascal case this. So let's call this, we'll call this all characters, like that, all characters. That's the operation name. And then followed by that, you might have an optional arguments here. We're not going to use arguments right now. Instead, we're just going to hit enter, and we use these brackets. So now that we have our operation named all characters, now we can actually run our query. And the query that I want to run, if I go look at the schema, here's all the queries that's possible on this API. So I'm going to run the characters query, which takes in optional arguments of a page, I'm guessing for pagination, and to filter if I wanted to filter out a character. So I'm not going to pass any of those arguments right now. And I'm just going to execute the query called character, like this. So once I run character, I can now go ahead and ask for some fields on the character. What fields do I have? Well, if I go click on a character here, you can see that characters have an info, and then they have, well, I'm sorry, this thing returned type characters, which has info and then results. And then you have, for a results, you have an array of characters, which is an ID of name and stuff like that. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and get the results, or I'm sorry, get the, where is it at? There we go. The ID like this. So if I hit enter, run this, I get a null for that. So let's try a name. See what happens when we get a name. Oh, name is null. Oh, maybe this API is just not filling it right now. Let's try, oh, I'm sorry. I'm running character. I need characters. There we go. Then we get the results. And now we can do something like, give me the name, give me the episode, or episode's a object type. Let's just do name. And now we get characters, results, an array, and we get name, Rick and Morty. So this is an operation name. So a couple things to note here is you note that the tab up top reflected the name of the operation, and that's kind of the point of operation name. So operation names are used for client-side caching, which we'll get into, and indexing inside of tools like GraphQL Playground, which is what I just showed you. So having the operation name is a way that tools like GraphQL Playground and graphql can reference different operations that you're trying to run. So keeping those names unique is a really good practice. And in fact, when we get to client-side caching and stuff like that, you definitely want to keep them unique. Otherwise, you will have conflicts with like state and things like that. So make sure you have those operation names unique. So naming your functions just like in JavaScript versus keeping them anonymous.